So now moving on to our last presenter in this conference, Alison Moskowitz. Alison is an education specialist for the International Social Impact Team at Sesame Workshop. She leads project management, program design, and the creation of multimedia teaching and learning materials for Sesame Workshop's international projects. Her focus is on financial empowerment, water and sanitation, early learning, and mutual respect and understanding. What a mix. Prior to joining Sesame Workshop, Alison worked at Bridge International Academies, assisting with curriculum development, project management, and production of primary schools throughout East Africa. Alison holds a BA in Peace and Justice Study and is currently pursuing a Master of Public Administration. Alison will share with us how they use the world-famous Sesame characters to support girls with managing their menstruation in Zimbabwe. Alison, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Let me just share my screen so you can see the presentation. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Okay, wonderful. So my name is Alison Moskowitz. I'm an educational specialist at Sesame Workshop, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago that I attended my first Menstrual Hygiene Management in Schools conference, and we were just dreaming about the possibility of creating a menstrual hygiene Muppet. And now I'm so excited to be here presenting our work to you and getting to share this really exciting thing. Hold on, I'm trying to go to the next slide. So for those of you who don't know, Sesame Workshop is the nonprofit organization behind the educational television show Sesame Street. Sesame Street was started in the 1960s in a very tumultuous time in American history. The Vietnam War was raging on, the civil rights movement was active, and generally what you saw on TV was really scary. So Sesame tried to do something different and put a diverse and integrated neighborhood on TV where kids can talk to these fun Muppet characters about the things that were really happening in their lives. So this was an opportunity where they could learn and they could ask questions about grief and war and how to learn when everything around you is really challenging. And Sesame has continued that tradition and really engaged children with the questions that they may not have easy answers for. So building off of this, Sesame expanded all over the globe, becoming the world's longest street. Currently, Sesame is locally created in 30 countries and watched in over 150. And Sesame uses digital media, TV, radio, and community engagement to meet kids where they are with what they need. So that ranges from HIV and AIDS in South Africa to girls' empowerment and education in Afghanistan, and to resilience education for the Syrian response region, which is a big project that we're working on today. One of the community engagement projects that I want to talk to you about is the WashUp project, which built into our WashUp Girl Talk project, which is our MHM initiative. So WashUp is a program with our partner World Vision, currently being implemented in 13 countries, reaching children ages 6 to 10 with important hygiene education. We cover hand washing, latrine use, basic hygiene, food hygiene, all of these really, really important things that kids know, but they may not know all the details of. So using these fun characters, we are able to engage them in a completely different way and really make this a fun learning environment. So I first want to introduce you to one of our friends. This is Raya. She is the green Muppet at the bottom of the screen. She's our wash ambassador. She travels the world telling kids about how to wash their hands properly, which is more important than ever today. She, as I mentioned, is a world traveler and actually currently speaks over 30 languages, so she's very impressive. So WashUp works in schools through in-school programs, after-school programs, and community-based programs, and using messaging about hand washing, latrine use, wearing sandals, all of those really important hygiene topics. And one of the really important educational components of the curriculum that I think is important to highlight is viewing children as agents of change. So our goal is to empower children with the knowledge and skills about hygiene and health to go home and teach their communities about this. So especially when we're talking about MHM and the stigma and taboos that are laden with this topic, we want to empower children to start changing that stigmatization from the inside. So now moving on to Girl Talk. So building on the success of WashUp, we integrated menstrual hygiene management into existing WashUp curriculum and launched WashUp Girl Talk, which is currently being piloted in Zimbabwe in 150 schools for girls ages 10 to 14, girls and boys ages 10 to 14, aiming to reach 25,000 girls. And we've introduced a new cast of characters. So we have Dee Dee, the purple Muppet in the middle. She is Raya's older sister. And she is our MHM guru. She knows everything about menstrual hygiene management and is able to talk to her friends and explain questions about this really complicated subject to them. So Dee Dee can answer these questions about sensitive issues, and she can also model how to engage in conversations that are challenging to have. Learners might be nervous or afraid or embarrassed to talk about menstruation, but Dee Dee and her friends can talk about these conversations openly and model how to have those discussions. So on this page, we see Dee Dee, our purple Muppet. Sandra is the girl next to her. We follow her arc through the program as she first gets her period, doesn't know what to do, and by the end, she helps another girl who gets her first period. And over on the other side is Tinashe. He's our example of a young boy who's a menstrual hygiene management ally. He understands that this is something that everyone goes through. He understands that puberty is something that he's going through too, and that it's really important to support one another. So here are the short and long-term aims of our program. And these aims are closely aligned with UNICEF's MHM guidance on successful programming. So we look to increase knowledge and skills through curriculum and training. We provide materials for reusable menstrual pads. Infrastructure is provided by our partner World Vision. They're building girl-friendly latrines in the schools for Girl Talk. This is one of the amazing things about our partnership that I think we've been talking about throughout the day, this multi-sectoral approach, that World Vision is able to provide the hard infrastructure in terms of water points and latrines, and Sesame can provide the soft infrastructure, which is the education and the knowledge. That way they can learn about these behaviors and then practice those behaviors. And finally, social support. We are working with parents groups, and boys are involved in the program as well in an effort to destigmatize the issue. So WashUp is a really fun and dynamic active learning approach. It's a 10-session program for after-school learners. It's part of a school health club. There's 5 sessions that are girls only, which is where girls can focus on the details of menstruation in a safe and comfortable space. And there's 5 sessions that boys attend as well, which is more generally about puberty, how everyone's bodies are changing at this time, and how to support one another during this challenging time. The materials for the program include a training manual, which guides the teachers on the lesson plans, the curriculum, and also the basic biology of menstruation. There are activity books for girls and boys. These contain games, prompts for discussion, comic strips, places for learners to journal and get out their thoughts. There's flashcards, which promote active learning through games and dramas. Videos and Pico projectors. These are really cool battery-operated projectors. They don't require electricity, so we're able to use them in our schools, which do not have electrical capacity. And on these Pico projectors, we have 5 animated videos, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and also materials for making reusable pads. So as I mentioned before, we know that it's important to combine knowledge with ability to practice the behavior. So since we're talking about making reusable pads, we're also providing the materials so that girls can practice these new behaviors. I want to quickly show you just a snippet of our video as one of our videos. So we have 5 videos total, and they cover the biological process of menstruation, how to take care of yourself during your period, how to have confidence in yourself during this time, how to make reusable pads, and a simple question and answer video where one of our characters asks questions that are on her mind. This video, like any other day, is about our character Sandra, who has gotten her period, and she doesn't know if she can go to school, if she can play soccer, if she can do all the things that she wants to do. This is just a cut down, so just a 30-second snippet of a longer video, but I think it should give you a good idea.
When I get my period, it can be uncomfortable, but doesn't keep me from doing anything that I want to do. I go to school, I study, and I go out and play football, just like any other day.
What if she gives it to the other players?
That can't happen. When you get your period, it is something happening to your body. It doesn't affect anyone else.
Well, I do want to play.
Your feet definitely wanna play.
Okay, so that's just a quick video. So we see Sandra questioning whether or not she can do this, Dee Dee helping to guide her, and the character in the middle is Rudo. She's one of our younger characters. She kind of acts like an Elmo and is able to ask the questions that other characters might be fearful to ask. So it's a really good way to get critical and crucial educational messages in a fun and dynamic way. So I want to show you a couple of pictures of Girl Talk in action. So here we see two girls making reusable pads with the WashUp activity book underneath them. In the middle is a water tank, and on top of it is written, "Let's talk openly about girls' menstrual health in our community," in Shona, which is the local language that we're working in. And you can see that there's been some artwork designed of our Muppets, which is really exciting. And then finally, the picture of the man making a reusable menstrual pad. He is one of our teachers, and he was so excited to learn how to do this so he could bring the pads home to his daughter. I will say that the men were a little bit slower at sewing the menstrual pads, but it was incredible with the care that they took in doing this. And they were so thrilled to be able to bring these pads home to their own kids. One of the other amazing things that happened with this program was how the community became involved. So initially, we were somewhat cautious. We didn't know how the community would react to this type of program, but we were so happy, and they have been a huge asset to the program. Mothers groups have been volunteering to help sew menstrual pads. So they come to the sessions and they sew pads with the girls. Girls are going home and talking to their fathers about menstruation. And then the fathers are coming into the schools and asking teachers questions because they don't know how to answer it, which is just an absolutely wild concept that girls would talk about periods with their fathers at home. It's definitely at the beginning of a culture shift. And finally, I think my favorite, children are talking about Raya and Dee Dee at home with their parents as if they are their new friends. So much so that parents are asking, who are these new students? Why haven't I met them yet? Not knowing that they're simply animated characters. And so here in this video, it's just a tiny snippet of a mother's group getting ready to join the class. And they're singing a song before we begin. And here again, we see another hand painting of Dee Dee. This one says, "Adolescence is growth." So throughout the process, we have learned a lot of lessons, and we've conducted a lot of research that I want to quickly talk through. We conducted 2 rounds of formative research to help refine our content. We always conduct formative research, but we knew it was especially important on this topic. First, because this was the first time we were venturing into menstrual hygiene management. And second, because this is a sensitive issue. It's a taboo and stigmatized in many ways. So we wanted to make sure we were doing it correctly. And we learned a ton, and we've made a lot of changes to the program because of it. First, local language is critical for understanding. This one seems pretty obvious. This one seems pretty obvious. But we had initially been told that they would be able to understand English with no problem. Except once we started the program, it seemed that these concepts were really, really challenging to learn when it wasn't in your local language. So we immediately adapted everything, changed it from English to Shona, and including all of our videos, which are now in local language. Additionally, a big learning for us was about myths and long-held beliefs. These are really difficult to change locally. There's a reason that they're long-held beliefs. And we had to try a number of different methods to manage myths. Initially, we weren't so successful, but after talking to our local teams and local people on the ground, we were able to get to a point that we felt that we could tackle really complicated topics like myths. And finally, teachers reported that they needed more information and more training to feel confident. They did not feel that they could teach this because many of them hadn't learned it when they were kids. So we added a lot more depth to the training manual. We added extra days to the trainings. That way we could make sure that they felt confident before they went into the program. Finally, expect the unexpected. As many of you know, working in these circumstances can be really challenging, and working in Zimbabwe at this time threw a lot of curveballs at us. A military coup, a cyclone, and currency issues that resulted in hyperinflation have made it extremely difficult to purchase materials for reusable pads, something that we're still dealing with. And this is just an opportunity for me to shout out our amazing team and teachers on the ground. The fact that our program has been so successful, the fact that it could be implemented at all, is really a testament to their hard work. This program was incredibly challenging, especially as schools were closed and reopened through coups and cyclones. So it's really incredible work on the part of our partners on the ground. We also conducted a summative research at the end to find out if our learners had changes in knowledge, and we are very encouraged by the results and really excited. So participants in Girl Talk Club showed significant increases in knowledge about puberty and menstruation. It helped to dispel several common myths, which, as I mentioned, was one of our challenges. So I personally was excited about that. And also, students in Girl Talk Clubs are now talking to their family members more about menstruation. So here's just a couple of graphs to show this. You can see the comparison between our control group and the Girl Talk group, where Girl Talk had a significant increase in knowledge. And here we can see who Girl Talk participants were talking to afterward. So they were much more comfortable talking to their teachers and mothers, and fewer Girl Talk participants talked to no one, which meant that they were talking to someone and felt more comfortable with this topic. So we're really excited that it could be starting to have some destigmatizing power. So I'm coming to the end here now, but I will just want to look forward briefly. One of the things that our research was not able to look into was behavior change, because very few of the girls reported having their period. So we really focused on knowledge change here. And in the next phase of Girl Talk, whatever that may be, I am personally really interested in trying to track the behaviors more. As we've learned today, there could be differences between behaviors and knowledge and behaviors and perceptions. So I think it's really important to tackle both of these subjects. And on that note, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. This was super interesting and super fun also to see those characters. And it looks to me like it's a similar theme with Oki as well, making a serious topic that is often attached to a lot of shame and so on, a fun and playful way of engaging. There are a couple of questions that sort of have been lingering around on Slido that participants seem to have a lot of questions about, and you have touched on a lot of them in your presentation. So I'm going to put you on the spot now. The first one is around involvement of boys. So we've learned that you have included boys in the puberty education. Can you share a little bit more what you have learned about involving boys and men? Some of the fathers of adolescent girls, we've now heard for the second time about a father of an adolescent girl, Everest being the first one, are getting involved in menstrual hygiene management. So involvement of boys and men as a first. The second is in more traditional society, and I understand you worked in Zimbabwe with you had some challenges with dispelling traditional health myths. Can you give us like some examples of the kind of challenges you've been dealing with and how you overcame them? And then the third question is we understand that like this is a really great approach to using these characters to communicate contents that might not be easily communicated in like with a normal face-to-face conversation. But I assume making these animated videos is quite resource intensive. Are there any ways that you can advise participants of the conference that they can use these concepts of characters and making conversation easy that is less resource intensive?
Great, yeah. Those are great questions. First, about involvement of boys and men. I think this is something that we're still working to improve. We've done just a little bit of ad hoc testing in the field. I've gone to sessions that had boys and girls together and sessions that were girls only. And then I talked to the girls afterward and I talked to the boys afterward. And all of the girls said, I would prefer to learn about this subject by myself. And all of the boys said, I want to learn about this subject too. It's not right for us to be kept outside. So it's kind of an interesting and challenging moment for us. It's so important to maintain the dignity of girls in this moment, but it also is important for boys to understand this content, which is why we decided to do a split approach, that 5 sessions would be boys and girls together and 5 sessions would be just for girls. About men's involvement, fathers coming to the schools to ask questions was certainly not something that we anticipated. But girls were very comfortable talking about their periods very quickly. And so they were talking to their parents, and then parents had questions. Some parents were not thrilled that this is what was being taught in schools, but after talking to the teachers, they understood that this is simply a health issue. This is really important for their children to know. So I think the fact that the program created this opportunity for interaction between the community really, really helped us. So I think that's something we'll be looking to leverage more explicitly in the future. Myths. Yes, the myths question was really challenging. The first iteration of the project, we simply approached it that teachers would tell the students, this is just a myth. A myth is a story you've heard, but it's not the truth. And we received so much pushback from children. These stories are deeply ingrained, and they refused to believe the teachers when the teachers said that it wasn't true. So we had to go about it in a different way. And just to give you an example, one of the myths is that women should not cook while they're on their periods because it could affect the health of the family, or it could make them infertile. That's another myth. And so rather than just having teachers tell students that's not true, we need to show them why that's not true. So we created a drama between a mother and her child, where the child asks the mom, is this a true story? And the mom talks to the child about, let's think about it. I get my period every month and I cook for you every day. Have you ever gotten sick? And they're able to model this thought process and trying to figure out what is true and what is not, and critical thinking. And so that was our approach, and we were really excited to see that it seems to work. There's still some myths that are going to be really, really tough to tackle. Absolutely. But I think we need to kind of elevate the programming there because students are capable of so much, and they're capable of that critical thinking. And I think that they were able to get the messaging through that way. Finally, and this is a tough question about resource intensivity. Yes, certainly this program requires resources. However, I think the concepts can travel anywhere. One of the amazing things about Sesame is that we talk to children and learners in the way that they talk to one another. So any program can do that. You don't need the characters, although they are fun and it helps. But the idea is to make it as approachable as possible. That way, this challenging topic doesn't feel so challenging anymore. We also try to make our resources as sustainable as possible. So I showed one picture of the WashUp program with kids all around a big educational mat. So that mat can be used time after time, year after year, year after year. So we're always trying to think about that sustainability component as well. As far as the videos, They are all available online on YouTube. So if anyone is curious in trying them out in their own context, we would be happy for you to do that. But yeah, I would say that the main idea is to talk to kids in a way that they understand and to try to make these topics as fun and engaging as possible. That is how you're going to get them to be excited about this content, not just passively destigmatize it, but actively want to go out and talk about these issues. I'd be happy to take any other questions if there are.
There are plenty of questions, to the extent that we'll have to shift some of them to our report. Maybe one question, first of all, lots of praise. So people really like your presentation. Can you share more about the creative process behind the story and the character development?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the fun stuff. I'm happy to do that. So Sesame's process always starts with a curriculum advisory, which is an advisory with experts in the field, both in MHM and also in the local context. So we held it in Zimbabwe. And this is where we kind of start to get the creative juices flowing. What are the educational topics that we need to come up with, and how are we going to tackle it? There's so much to do. How can we do it in a short program? So once we are able to pin down an educational framework, that's when the really fun production side comes in. Working with some very creative people on my team, they start to design the storylines. And then we, as far as like the character development, we take inspiration from real people. Our World Vision team in Zimbabwe sent us tons of pictures of schools and school uniforms and what a latrine would look like there, and popular games kids would play and popular haircuts. And we just slowly start creating these characters. And the characters are repeatedly reviewed by local teams, as well as global teams, because we want these characters to be able to travel as well. That they could work in Zimbabwe, but they could also work somewhere else if a program travels there. And as I mentioned, formative research is a huge part of our process. So it might seem somewhat silly, but Rudo, her hair was different at the beginning. But when we did formative research, we learned from students in Zimbabwe that, like, no, that's not how a 10-year-old girl would wear her hair. So it was important that we changed that. So we're really reliant, and we really need the formative research. And we feel very lucky that we were able to conduct 2 different rounds of formative, so we could really refine this program. So it not only worked educationally, but contextually. And it seemed local, even though it was made in collaboration with global teams.
Great, thank you so much for all these insights. That sounds like you've gone through a real great process of iteration to put the girls at the center of all of the material and design. There are a couple of technical questions which I think we will park to the Yammer side, and just one more maybe to address for you, which is a question about describe a little bit more the wash intervention component of the work that the MHM component was integrated into. Also hooking onto the discussion we had previously and with the previous presenters, that MH interventions need to be embedded in making available facilities and so on.
Great. Yeah. Well, first, before I forget, I'm sorry that the videos didn't have sound. I saw that on the chat box on the side. I'm happy to share videos at a later date. And again, they're available on YouTube. But talking about the WashUp program, which is our initial WASH program that we then built Girl Talk into. So WashUp is currently in 13 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, South Asia, and Latin America, and focuses on basic water sanitation hygiene principles, including hand washing, wearing shoes to the latrine, food safety, and a couple of other curricular topics. And it's implemented in schools in a pretty similar way. We have a suite of materials, which includes a big educational floor mat that kids can jump all over and play games, a training manual for teachers, different storybooks, comic books, tons and tons of activities, all of which attempt to teach these really important life-saving messaging while also being fun and engaging for children. So this program exists in Zimbabwe. That's one of the 13 countries. And kids are already very familiar with our characters. They know Raya. They know Elmo, who's another popular Sesame Street character. And so for this first MHM pilot, Girl Talk, we wanted to build on existing WashUp work. Kids are already familiar with how a Sesame program looks, with the type of interactive learning they're going to do. They know who these characters are. Generally, they know that they have personalities and that when they come to a Sesame program, they're going to get to read a comic book, play a game, do something fun, watch a video. So that was really one of the goals of putting Girl Talk in a WashUp school, was that we would just be able to build up so that after kids graduate from WashUp, ages 6 to 10, they just graduate into Girl Talk, ages 10 to 14. Because that's one of the big pieces of feedback we hear as well from ages 6 to 10 in WashUp, is what happens once they go through the program? What do they do now? So Girl Talk was a really nice opportunity to continue that education. And we'll have learners go through the program from a very young age through adolescence. So that's a really exciting thing for us.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we would all love to hear more about Sesame Street, but I would say we defer this for now to the Yammer discussion and any follow-up discussion that you might have bilaterally, and move on to some reflections from our discussions on the last two presentations. So thank you very much, Julie and Alison, who I think you've been a real inspiration to all of us, underlining the importance of data and monitoring for making investments, and not just any data, but to pay attention to not just how girls manage their periods, but how they feel about it, and work with the entire ecosystem, work with fathers, with mothers, with teachers, and find some new and creative way to talk about menstruation.